clients need to be asking their agency, what will you be transferring to my team? What can you provide me? Is it a skill, a method, a tool that will, allow my team to understand sort of what they can gain from this engagement going forward?
We want a writer to redesign an editorial workflow, or a strategist to think about what kind of data sources they want to connect. And if you're having everyone in the organization empowered to change their everyday work, that scales really fast.
Biopharma leaders are being asked to move faster and do more in a world transformed by AI. But the old agency model is finally cracking under the pressure. Today, I'm joined by two members of Woven Health Collective's team, President Courtney Kaprelian and Chief Digital AI and Technology Officer Bart Zoni. Courtney and Bart argue that the best partners in 2026 don't build dependency, they build client capability. We're exploring where real agency value lives now, which is in deep scientific acumen, strategic judgment, and the stewardship that keeps your team current. It's a direct conversation for brand, medical, and commercial leaders rethinking what they buy, what they build, and what they demand from their partners. I'm Bella Chakowski. I'm a reporter for MM+M, and this is the MM+M podcast in partnership with Woven Health Collective. Thank you both for being here today. I'm excited for this conversation. Been having a lot of conversations lately around A100 and, talking about this being the most, if not one of the most disruptive periods in advertising and in this space. So love to get some of your insights on that, starting off by just asking, or saying rather that we know that biopharma leaders are being asked to move faster, do more, and compete in a ever more competitive landscape, especially with how AI is changing things. And, they may have budget constraints, shrinking teams. How are pharma clients coming up against these issues? How are they navigating them? And what's changed and how they're expecting agencies to act?
Yeah, I think I can speak to you about, sort of the hardest things or the top three things that we're seeing or hearing from clients. And, it's the stack of pressures, right? It's like what you said, Bella. It's the shrinking teams, the tighter budgets, the legacy systems that are not built for the AI era speed. I think it's also, of course, the AI change and burden. They're being asked to use AI, sometimes without even clear internal guidance. We've actually spoken to some clients, even at Big Pharma, and they're not exactly sure how they're moving through this change and applying it to their everyday jobs yet. So it's how can we play the role in supporting that process? And then what do they need from a practical sense? So they're going to need partners to reduce that cognitive load every day, right? They simplify decisions, give them the pathways, help them experiment safely. It's no longer just like tasks, right? It's no longer just slides. It's translating them. It's prioritization. It's a way to move from the overwhelming to like sort of the concrete next steps and how we're doing that as a partner for them.
What I've sensed is a really rapid shift in the conversation from being primarily about tactics to being more about process and expanding what's possible, right? So it's not necessarily about AI, but the concept of we might be able to do more that we've never been able to do before. And they're looking to partners to guide that process. So the conversations are more like, hey, we're going to reorganize our medical affairs team. We need to think about how we can engage KOLs across a whole portfolio now. Or I'm being told I need to integrate AI into our content workflows, and I don't even know what that looks like. Can you help us? And that's fun for an agency rather than just saying, hey, let's talk about the color of the tent cards at the ad board. Those things are important, but the things where we really can add value are these bigger questions, and they're coming up more and more than they ever did.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm hearing a lot in the past few months about how the old agency model, if we can call it that, is sort of going by the wayside in a lot of ways. And agencies are increasingly responding by restructuring and trying to, have new offerings and really enable capabilities among clients themselves. Can you talk a little bit about how that restructuring maybe is important, but isn't sort of the full picture? How can an agency structure kill client value? And what does that look like from the client side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think goes back to a new org chart really doesn't automatically create the value. And I think you really need to think about what that structure is and how does it make it easier for the decision-making process? And then how does it make it easier to get work into the market faster? What we've seen from other agencies is there's fragmented scopes, there's siloed teams still. So even if you've changed your org chart, you haven't really changed the ways of working. And, creating multiple handoffs and conflicting recommendations and things like that are just continuing to create further issue. I think what we are so proud of here at Woven is that we are often told by our clients that they didn't realize it was different teams that were working on the same projects. And in some instances, multiple teams working on one project, which that is success in our minds.
How do you sort of manage that? How do you prevent those silos? How do you make for that seamless experience for clients?
Yeah, I think you need to reduce the friction for clients, right? So you have this wider capability set and you don't want fragmented work. So you want this one point of contact, which is sort of your account lead that shepherds the process. We don't necessarily have handoffs. We have one integrated team around the problem, and we have that key person and personnel that has that growth mindset, right? That wants to bring in the right leaders to be able to meet the needs of our clients. And that's an ongoing process. That's not something that just is a one and done. It is, again, what's the challenge? What's the solution? And I need to bring in the right, subject matter experts and resources that can span across medical, promo, digital, production, logistics, wherever we need to be within our organization to make sure that we're delivering the right solution for them, and that they do not feel that friction ultimately.
I think we benefited from a head start because, when Jeannie Martell founded the company, culture as a strategy was a thing, and hiring for people that are just naturally collaborative was a big part of that success. So these changes haven't hit us quite as hard because working in an integrated way has kind of been part of our DNA from the beginning. So we get to focus on the fun stuff and not have to wrestle with some of those structural problems that others might have to face.
It's that natural cohesion there, it sounds like.
Yeah, there is. And I'd just like to, parlay off of that for a minute. I think to Bart's point, Jeannie Martell, our CEO, was so intentional about the acquisitions that she made. And there have been 5 in 5 years, but at the same time, these are very entrepreneurial organizations, and coming together with an entrepreneurial mindset on evolving, not only being agile, but also the evolution of being able to want to solve for our clients and not set in old ways. What's going to meet the needs of our clients, and how can we evolve quickly to be able to meet those needs has been the mantra since day one here.
That's a great segue maybe into this next question for Bart. What would you say innovation actually means day to day in a modern agency, like how Woven goes about its day to day? Was that new offerings, new processes, business models, or some combination of them?
It's all of the above, but I don't know if that's necessarily the most important part. I think it's the approach that probably makes it happen. We treat innovation as a repeatable discipline. So methods and pipelines and governance, and we want that to live inside every team. So what we're not doing is saying, oh, innovation is a department, or innovation is like a leadership working group. We want to kind of have this formal process. And what we've put in place is an actual employee upskilling initiative to focus on process improvement, not necessarily just technology, because if people don't have confidence in the tools throughout the whole organization, then it's like a committee report. So if we empower everybody who's close to the work, we want a writer to redesign an editorial workflow, or a strategist to think about what kind of data sources they want to connect. And if you're having everyone in the organization empowered to change their everyday work, that scales really fast. Because it comes from the people that live the problems, instead of some lab with Courtney and I handing solutions down to everybody. And I think that works a lot better.
Clients are learning new things every day. I think that's evident now. But as an agency, how do you encourage and discourage their actions around that?
Yeah, I think what we need to do first is to decide whether we're going to pilot something versus push it forward. And I think we need to assess it in a few different ways. So looking at things from a risk standpoint, is it a high risk idea that needs to start in a controlled environment? Is it something that's lower risk that can be a process improvement that can be done in more agile function, sort of running alongside as we work? And then we need to look at it. Does this, change the way core work is being done? And if so, that's more high risk. So we need to assess that. And again, based on what I was saying before, it is truly the role of the account leads. We really view them as the stewards of this process. They need to make sure that these solutions are tested, governed, scalable, and that they are going to meet the client's needs, that they're anticipating the needs over time. And then, of course, challenging for those solutions along the way. We recently had a call internally, and one of our key account people said, if we're not anticipating what they need to, or what they're going to be asking us next, then we're not doing our jobs. And that's exactly how they go about their every day in assessing these changes within the organization and, quite frankly, where we need to be in the market.
And, here's a very concrete example to that end. I think we're excited and embrace the concept that the capabilities internally within Biopharma are expanding really rapidly, because that gives us an opportunity to do the really fun stuff. We had a client who wanted to prioritize regional conferences, right? And in the old world, that task would have been handed to us and we would have delivered a PowerPoint, maybe with a methods slide, right? And all the know-how about how we got there and what we did is kind of hidden. And that was kind of the agency model, right? You hide the secret sauce a little bit and rent it back. So what we did instead is we built an interactive tool for this client. We used AI and other methods to do that, but we did it really fast. But the client could adjust the weighting and the scoring and the variables. And we just handed it over and said, here's the tool. It's yours. Here's how you use it. Of course, we didn't just step away. It became a centerpiece for conversations, but that's a new thing that the company couldn't do before. And they had the power to use it. And what happens is now we're working together around one thing rather than this transactional relationship. And the exciting part of how pharma's changing is that it's becoming less transactional, more strategic. And I think that's where value comes from.
So perhaps the TLDR on this is the role of agencies is changing, but they're not becoming any less relevant in that relationship.
Yeah. And again, that's the true partnership, right? So they come to us with that question versus another agency, which allows us to continue to win elsewhere as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift gears a little bit. We're talking a lot about innovation and technology and shifts in the landscape as technology advances. But we also know that business transformation agencies is often won or lost on culture and the alignment with clients rather than just siloed off in technology. What are you guys doing to sort of help people at Woven feel ownership of at Woven, I should say, on the client side, feel ownership of the change that's happening around them, rather than just that they're on this wild ride and the change is happening regardless of whether they're up to speed?
Yeah, I just obviously want to emphasize that talent can operate. It needs to be able to operate in integrated and very change-heavy environments. This is that growth mindset I was talking about. These are the stewards, and I keep using that word stewards because I was thinking about it last night. Our account leads are the ones that are looking for the ways to meet the needs of our clients. They have the mentality that they want to do more for their clients. They want to be that cohesive thinker for them. They want to make sure that they're offering everything they can across the board between all of our different business units. And they are the ones connecting the dots. So anyone that we're hiring at this point, we are looking for obviously that growth mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset, who are going to be able to move with agility within the organization, as well as throughout their client organizations. I was just reviewing a client case study this morning that between 2023 to now, we've grown the organization, we've grown our revenue leaps and bounds. But not only that, we now have 125 different connections within that company across medical, promotional, marketing, digital, and other areas of the organization. I think that speaks volumes to the types of people that we need to bring into the organization and have on board to be able to service a client to that degree.
It's easy for the tech guy just to say we're hiring for digital experience and AI fluency, but the reality is you could teach that stuff, but you can't teach the way somebody's wired. And we hire collaborators, right? People are curious, who lean into problems. And if you have that, we could teach the tech stuff. That part we can handle.
I think that's a really important note for sure. Training up the people that you know are capable and are talented. You guys have provided some great material examples of enabling clients and being a partner rather than, maybe having the transactional relationships that agencies and clients have had in the past. I'd like if you could just give me a couple takeaways that every, pharma leader should be asking their agency right now. How do they approach their next meeting successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, a few questions that it should be able to be answered. And if not, it should be a signal that maybe it's not the right agency partnership. And I think clients need to be asking their agency, what will you be transferring to my team? Per Bart's, his example before, what can you provide me? Is it a skill, a method, a tool, like he was explaining, that will gain, allow my team to understand sort of what they can gain from this engagement going forward? What is the agency uniquely accountable for that the team internally at the client should not be replicating, that we should be supporting them on? And then essentially, how are we going to leave this engagement stronger and not dependent on the agency? Essentially, I think that's the key question in all of those.
Absolutely. Bart, if I could turn back to you sort of as we wind down the conversation, lots of conversations currently happening about like how to keep pace with the rate of change. But I'm sure there are some people, some stakeholders who are feeling like they're already behind or they're constantly at risk of falling behind of this advancement. What's one piece of advice you would give a pharma leader who feels behind on that transformation today?
Start with human capability, not technology tools. And when you're feeling FOMO, that fear of missing out, know that everybody's experiencing it the way that you are. And if you can accomplish that, I think you're going to be okay.
It's a good takeaway. And Courtney, I'll ask you the last question, which is just if you could look 3 years down the road, project how the industry will look, what will the best agency and client relationship actually look like?
I would say agencies absolutely need to be the stewards of the work. We need to be more integrated, more honest with the possibilities of what can be. And that means that capability building needs to be a central part of the scope and no longer a nice to have.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you both for joining me today. This has been, I think, a really helpful conversation for our listeners who are navigating all the changes that you all are navigating day to day. And I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bella.
Thank you, Bella.